Hello, my name's Ngakma Nor'dzin and I'm the author of Battlecry of Freedom, the book that looks at the teachings of Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje, the 7 points of mind training. Unfortunately, the second session of the Battlecry teachings on Zoom, we had some technical problems and the teaching didn't record. So I'm redoing this session as a separate item here to put onto YouTube, so there isn't a gap in the teachings when we have next Monday's session. So the first session, we looked at how the teachings, the 7 points of mind training of Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje, were placed in terms of history in the 12th century. And now we're going to look at what those 7 points are, start to look at them in detail. So the teaching on mind training is divided into these 7 points. And my one-word title for these points are as follows: preliminaries, awakening, transformation, the 5 powers, evaluation, commitment, and advice. And in each of these points, there are a certain number of slogans. Now, this word slogan is quite interesting. I mused for quite a while about what word to use. And a slogan does seem to be one of the better words to use for these, because these, some of them are almost phrases, they're not even really complete sentences that point at the teaching. They're almost like pointing out instructions, some of them. And so there's something that once you're familiar with the teachings, that slogan will bring the whole body of teachings with it that's relevant to that point. So they have that announcement quality about them, that way of essentially expressing the point of the message of that slogan. So let's start at the beginning with the first point: preliminary practice, the foundation of the teaching. Now, this point only has one slogan in it, and that slogan is first train in the preliminaries. And I think this is really significant and really important, that there's only this one slogan in this first point of training. So Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje must have felt that preliminary practice was so important, so essential to the whole of the rest of the body of teachings, that he made them this entire point on their own. So the point is, the slogan is, first train in the preliminaries, first practice the preliminaries. So Chekhawa is not saying here, first read lots of books, first study the texts in depth, first go and find lots of Buddhist centers and sit and listen to lots of teachings. The basis of this practice, the practice of Lojong, is that you must be a practitioner. You have to actually engage in practice for any of the teachings to make any sense. Now, those of you who have read Battlecry of Freedom will know that I use horse riding as an analogy for mind training throughout the book. I have never heard of a riding school that didn't immediately put you on a horse. Even with the tiny little boys and girls who come along, they are immediately put on a pony. Even if somebody's holding them on the saddle and they're being led on a lead rein, they are put on a horse, on a pony. And it's the same with mind training. You have to mount the mind straight away. You have to be engaged in practice, else none of the teachings that follow in the other 6 points is going to be able to make any sense to you. You're not going to be able to grasp the teachings. You're not going to be able to allow mind training to grasp you, to become an important part of your life if you're not practicing. So it isn't really possible to overemphasize sufficiently the importance of beginning to practice right at the outset. Now, what the preliminary practices are will depend on where your practice is based, on the vehicle in which you base your practice. In the Arate lineage, we base our practice in Dzogchen. And so the primary preliminary practices for us are the 4 Naljos of Dzogchen Sende. And this is fundamentally silent sitting practice, discovering the nature of mind. If you're a tantric practitioner, then you may engage in the 4 preliminary practices of prostrations, purification, mantra, mandala or kilko offering, and the 4th one is guru yoga. If your practice is based in sutra, then the practice will be aimed at giving you a real taste of the reality of the experience of dissatisfaction, because that is the basis of sutra, wishing to understand why life is experienced as unsatisfactory, why it is impossible to gain complete and total satisfaction. However one lives one's life, however successful one's life is, it still isn't possible to find that ongoing experience of satisfaction. So what you engage in as preliminary practice will depend on your teacher. Your teacher will advise you in that based on the vehicle in which they're practicing and the vehicle in which they wish you to begin. So I'm not going to go into the preliminary practices in depth here, because the point of this slogan is that we must practice. That is the point that needs to be got across. In a sense, it doesn't really matter what you practice as long as you're practicing, and as long as you have a teacher and a community that you are working among in order to engage in those practices. So we move to the second point of mind training, and the full title of this is Awakened Mind, the Purpose and Basis of Training. And this contains 10 slogans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 10. No, 9 slogans. And these 9 slogans are usually divided into 2 groups. The first set are relating or referring and introducing ultimate awakening, and then the second set are talking about relative awakening. The traditional terms for these are ultimate bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta. Now, I always used to have a bit of a problem with this word relative, because when I heard the word relative next to the word ultimate, it felt to me as though, oh, so that's not as important then. And then when you hear about what the relative bodhicitta teachings are, you think, well, surely those are just as important as the ultimate bodhicitta. And so I had that particular misunderstanding there. And I think a way of looking at it is that one is to do with the ultimate state of mind that needs to be discovered from the perspective of the practitioner, and then relative awakening is how that should manifest in terms of your relationship with all phenomena, with other beings and everything that is form. So even your the experiences of your sense fields, that is relative awakening, relative bodhicitta. Anything that is about engagement with the form and phenomena of being alive. So I'm just going to read a paragraph that covers the first few of these slogans and expresses ultimate awakening. Awaken by regarding all phenomena as dreamlike and discovering the nature of unborn primordial awareness. Then allow the method to self-liberate into the natural condition of the mind and rest in that condition, regarding the phenomena of daily life as illusory. So this is the method for entering into the dimension of ultimate awakening. And I'll now look at these points individually. Consider all phenomena as dreamlike. I think probably the easiest way to approach this is to actually think about what is meant by dreamlike and what is our experience in dreams. When we're dreaming, we have a dream body, we have dream experiences, we have dream encounters with beings and situations, and it makes sense within the dream. When we wake up into waking reality, we don't expect it to make sense in terms of waking reality, but it makes sense in terms of dream reality. So when we're in the dream, we might be able to jump off a mountain and soar through the sky, or we can decide, I'm not enjoying this, I'm going to change it, and just change your dream. We don't find it surprising in the dream state that things can change in that way, and that strange things can happen, and we have capacities that we wouldn't expect to have in our waking reality. So that's the dream state. Now, the waking state, we feel, well, that is solid, that's real. It's got certain rules and regulations about it. It has physical characteristics, and those we can't do much about. But in actual fact, if we start to look at this and analyze that way of thinking, we can realize that in actual fact, the way that we experience reality in waking life very much depends on the circumstances. First of all, we experience waking life in a particular way because we are human beings. So we have the scope and the limitations of being human. Science tells us that dogs, for example, can hear at a different range of hearing to us. So there are things that they can hear that we can't hear because they have dog consciousness, dog capabilities in terms of their physicality, whereas we have human being capabilities. Some insects have compound eyes and will experience seeing in an extremely different way to the way we experience seeing. So I think the first thing is to recognize that waking reality isn't really any more dependable as an experience of reality than dreamlike experience. That our waking reality has capacity beyond what we can experience, or what we are experiencing, because of the limitations that we place upon it by our viewpoint, by our patterning, by our upbringing, by the culture in which we exist, and so on and so forth, and just by the very fact that we are human beings. So knowing that, it's quite useful to treat waking experience as if it is similar to dreamlike experience. It's not the whole story. It's a particular version of the story that is consistent with how we find ourselves when we're not sleeping. However, if we were truly awake, and I mean awake in the sense of realized, then that would add a whole extra dimension to the way we experience, because then we would be able to experience directly without the filters that we put in place through being human, being brought up in a particular culture, having particular habit patterns, having particular views of how things should be, how things are, and so on and so forth. So the instruction of consider all phenomena as dreamlike is reminding us that we should hold reality as we experience it lightly, that we should never assume that we have the whole picture, that what we're experiencing is actual reality. The second point is examine fundamental unborn awareness. And this is sitting practice. This is simply sitting, allowing the conceptual mind to settle. That's the mind that is like the waves on the top of the ocean or the clouds that appear in the sky. Allowing them to settle or dissipate so that we find the still, vast, intensely deep quality of the ocean of the mind, or the clear, blue, open, expansive quality of the sky mind. That through meditation practice, we just allow conceptual mind to settle, and then the nature of mind, the fundamental quality of mind, will reveal itself. And through that mind revealing itself, we will simply know things, rather than trying to know through conceptual mind, through the filter of you have to learn something to know it, you have to make judgments about it, you have to look at it in an analytical way with the thought, with conceptual mind. Rather than feeling that is required, if we make contact with the nature of mind, then a quality of simply knowing arises. And that is unborn awareness, the fundamental unborn awareness that is there for us all, and we can make contact with if we just engage in meditation practice and allow ourselves to discover that. So I find it really quite remarkable that Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje goes straight from preliminary practice, which is like, I'm a beginner, this is the arriving at the base of practice, to this is the ultimate experience of practice. This is going to the fruit of practice. This is what awakening is like. This is how you can be if the mind awakens. The third of these points in ultimate awakening is even the remedy self-liberates into its own natural condition. Now, this has something to do with confidence and something to do with allowing yourself to experience directly what arises from meditation without having to question it through the conceptual mind. If one arrives at a state that is peaceful, don't question it. If you arrive at a state where the mind seems settled and there's a powerful quality of presence, then you don't need to put in effort anymore. If you arrive, then the method naturally dissolves and you don't want to apply the method anymore. So to return to a horse riding analogy, if the riding's going really well and the horse is behaving really well, then don't be on the horse's case. Don't correct them if there's nothing to correct. If you ask the horse with a slight touch of your leg to turn right when you want to go right, and the horse responds, then that's it. You don't need to ask again. You don't need to keep asking. As soon as your horse responds and produces, cooperates with you to engage in what you want them to engage in, then let go. Then let that be. Just experience that. And it's the same with the mind. We apply the methods that we receive from our teachers. In particular, in our tradition, it'll be the 4 Naljos of Dzogchen Semde. So the first one is letting go of the content of mind, allowing mind to settle. This is the practice of Shine. If you're counting the breath, counting the out breaths to allow the mind to settle, and you discover that the mind has settled and you are in a space of mind without thought, you don't go back to the counting. You simply remain in that space. You let go of the method once the method is no longer needed. So this is why the method self-liberates into its own natural condition. I think the use of the word self-liberates is interesting here, because these teachings on Lojong are often presented as a sutric teaching. So this is a teaching based in the Sutrayanas, in the sutras. But in actual fact, self-liberation is a Dzogchen term. Self-liberation is the base, the path, and the fruit of Dzogchen. So the method self-liberates into its own natural condition. This is quite a Dzogchen expression. So right from the beginning, these teachings encompass all 3 yanas, Sutra, Tantra, and Dzogchen. The next slogan in this first section, number 5, is remain in the dimension of Kunji, the essence of the path. So Kunji is, the Sanskrit is a liar. So this is the nature of mind, discovering the unborn, unceasing quality of the nature of mind. This is the experience of non-duality. And through our practice, we can enter the dimension of the experience of Kunji. And if we find ourselves in that space, just as before, we remain there. So in these slogans, it's almost as if Chekhawa is teaching Zigzum Nedek, the 3 phrases, Dzogchen phrases, that one receives the instruction on how to practice. One arrives somewhere through that practice and stays there without doubt. And then once you are in that state, without doubt, you simply continue. So you remain in the dimension of Kunji. So these slogans in this first section encompass what it means to awaken, how we awaken, what the quality of mind will be when we awaken. So this is the fruit of practice. Then the last slogan in this last section, in this first section on awakening, is everything that arises in daily life is illusory. Now, when we talk about everything that arises being illusory, we're not saying that there isn't something out there that exists. Of course there is. There is a table in front of me. There is a computer in front of me. I am looking at you through a webcam. These things exist. So it isn't that this slogan is saying they don't exist, but it's saying that they are illusory in that they don't exist in the way that we think they exist. Now here I'm reminded of some of the paintings of René Magritte. I thought there was only one, but I came across another one yesterday. So there are two that I know of that have this sort of title. So the first one I came across was called Ceci n'est pas une pipe, which means this is not a pipe. And the second one is Ceci n'est pas une pomme, which means this is not an apple. The painting of the pipe and the apple are just astonishing paintings. They look so lifelike. They are so absolutely perfect in their quality of being three-dimensional, the texture, the light and shade, the colour. They are extraordinary, almost photorealistic, well actually photorealistic paintings. So the apple painting, you feel as though you could pick it up and take a bite out of it. It is such a realistic painting. So why is it called This Is Not an Apple? Why is the painting called This Is Not a Pipe? Because it is not an apple. It's a painting of an apple. It is not a pipe. It's a painting of a pipe. So our experience of reality is very similar to this. Our experience of reality is not how it actually is. Our experience of reality is illusory because we experience reality a bit like it is a painting of reality. So it's a reality that I have painted through my cultural conditioning, through the fact that I'm a human being with 5 sense organs and mental functioning. I create a reality through those. I also create a reality through whether I like something, don't like something, or don't care about something. I create a reality about you through what I experience of you. If you seem to be threatening to me, then I'm averse to you. If you seem to like me and want to know me better, then I'm attracted to you. And if you ignore me, well, I might actually be averse then. But if you don't seem to have any connection with me, then there's just indifference there. There's no interreaction. So my experience of any phenomena is not direct. It is possible to experience directly, and these teachings are teaching us that that is a possibility. But first we have to recognize that how we experience at the moment is illusory. How we experience phenomena are like a painting of phenomena, a mental, a physical, a sensory painting of phenomena that is filtered through everything that we are, all our history, all that we are in terms of karma, culture, how our family viewed things, whether we're happy, whether we're unhappy, whether the sun's shining, whether it's raining, and so on and so forth. Everything is coloured, is affected, is filtered through all those things. And we can see this very much in how people's opinions can differ so wildly about the same thing. I find rugby really not at all interesting, and Ngakpa ö-Dzin finds rugby really very enjoyable and likes to watch a rugby match. And I'm sure there are things that I find very enjoyable that other people really wouldn't see the point of. So our experience of reality is illusory, and it's important that we take responsibility for that. So everything that arises in daily life is illusory, is a personal statement. It's not saying the suffering that I see happening to you is illusory, so therefore I don't need to care about it. It's saying how I experience phenomena is illusory, and I take responsibility for the fact that it's an illusion. And I open myself to the possibility of direct experience. Now, this is as far as we got in this second session on the battle cry teachings. This has been a little bit quicker than it was on the evening because there aren't any questions, and it's different talking to a camera on my own than talking to an audience that's in front of me at the YouTube sessions where I can see some reaction from people. So if you're able to look at this, or if ever you have any, are looking at these way in the future when these have gone looking on YouTube and you have any questions, it's always possible to contact Arrowling Cardiff either through Facebook or by email arrowlingcardiff@gmail.com and ask a question. I would be more than delighted to answer your questions. So for the next session of Battle Cry, which happens on the coming Monday, we'll be looking at the second part of this first point of mind training, awakening mind, the purpose and basis of training. And I'll just read the paragraph that covers the slogans for that second section. Awaken through fixing the breath on the practice of alternately sending and receiving. Then examine the three objects of perception and the three poisons to enable them to be transformed into three roots of goodness. Remember to practice with slogans in daily life in all activities and situations, and to begin the practice of sending and receiving with oneself. And that is encompassed in 4 slogans, and we'll look at those 4 slogans to complete the second point of mind training in the next session. So just to sum up this session, the first point of Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje's 7 points of mind training is practice the preliminaries. So you must practice. That is essential. You need to get on that horse. You need to start a meditation practice, because none of these teachings are going to be of any use to you, and they're not going to engage you unless you are actually practicing. So whatever your teacher advises as a preliminary practice, do it. Get on and engage in that practice. And then the first section of the second point of mind training is about ultimate awakening, the nature of awakening the mind. how one engages in awakening the mind. So thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next session. Goodbye.